Ladies and gentlemen, today is Friday, February 24, 2020. It is 9:24 a.m. Washington State Time. I am Master Thich Thong Lai, and I would like to extend my warmest greetings to all the people living in the country and abroad. I am having a live stream session this morning to update on the situation of a war that could break out in North Korea, in the South China Sea, in the Malaysian water, in the upcoming days. Please listen to my comments. Ladies and gentlemen, according to the sources from my friends in the United States, the North Korean President Kim Jong-un did not attend his grandfather's birthday. As you can remember from my live stream session a few days earlier, on the 14th of this month, I had said that North Korea had a change of personnel in its political bureau, and there would be changes in the next few days in North Korea. Since Kim Jong-un took over the power, until now he did not acquire complete power. He only possesses the presidential position. A part of the political bureau is controlled by the party secretary of the Labor Ministry, which are Chinese agents in disguise. During the political bureau meeting to change personnel, Kim Jong-un replaced a series of two vice presidents in the Labor Party. At the moment, I do not know the names of the two vice presidents. However, my sources from my friends in the United States revealed that these two Labor Party's vice presidents hold great power. For example, Kim Jong-un controls the presidential side. The two vice presidents control the secretaries of North Korea. Kim reassigned these vice presidents and prepared for the last one. However, China has taken action. As you know, China gave sources to say that Kim Jong-un had a stroke and brain damage. Normally, all the North Korean news was provided by the South. This time, it was Chinese report that the North Korean president had a brain stroke and could die because they wanted him to show up. Therefore, you see in the last 3 to 4 days, even sources from the U.S. media, including the Attorney General, said that President Kim Jong-un had cerebral palsy. I was the only person for the past 3 days who said differently, that Kim Jong-un is still in control of the country and he is not in any danger. How could I determine this? I rely on the reaction of the South Korean intelligence, because the South Korean had comment about Kim Jong-un's health. They had said not to trust other sources. No other countries tracks the vitality of North Korea as closely as the South Korean government. I also monitored the attitude of President Donald Trump about the North Korean leader's health. President Trump stayed very calm. Why is that? All the former presidents acted differently. For example, in the past, every time North Korea fired missiles in the area, Obama administration would yield and provided aid. But President Donald Trump had a secret handshake with Kim Jong-un. At the beginning, when he just was inaugurated, whenever Kim Jong-un wanted to fire rockets at South Korea, President Donald Trump spoke very harshly and threatened to punish. However, after the summit of Kim Jong-un and President Donald Trump in Singapore and Vietnam, we can see that President Donald Trump's attitude is very calm, because there is an unofficial agreement acting to bypass China. Secondly, if the North Korean president had a problem, the U.S. President Donald Trump will be worried. Because remember, in North Korea, there are 18 atomic warheads. If Kim Jong-un is in trouble because of the coup d'etat emerge, 18 nuclear warheads would be a problem for the United States. If the coup emerges, Kim Jong-un will lose control of North Korea. His subordinates, generals, because of money, they will all sell these atomic warheads to terrorist organizations such as Iran, for example. So the problem is very dangerous for the whole region of Southeast Asia. The calm attitude of President Donald Trump shows us that North Korea is still under the control of President Kim Jong-un. Now, let's get back to the point. He purged and replaced his personnel on the meeting during April 11th. He excluded 2 vice presidents from the Labor Party. Talking about political party, the North Korean Labor Party holds great power. Kim Jong-un's grandfather and father also depended on this party. When Kim Jong-un took over the power in North Korea, he had only the presidential position. Let me use Vietnam to show you more clearly. The presidential chair was owned by Trần Đại Quang. After he died, Nguyễn Phú Trọng took over. On the contrary, Kim Jong-un only held the presidential, but not the North Korean Labor Party. Now you can understand when he replaced the 2 vice presidents of the Labor Party, the Chinese Communists sent a special team to pursue and assassinate the president of North Korea. Kim Jong-un was protected by a powerful task force operated by his sister. The Chinese special team attacked the North Korean team and lost quite a few agents. The North Korean lost 4 members as well. In order to reach Kim Jong-un, the Chinese team had to infiltrate a total of 4 protected levels. That is what I know so far. Back to the point. I had a talk a few months ago regarding how the Chinese Communists planned their battlefields. There were 4 possible battlefields that the Chinese Communists would prepare. The first one was Taiwan. The second battlefield will be Vietnam. The third battlefield will be the South China Sea with other Southeast Asian countries, such as Malaysia and Philippines. The fourth battlefield will be North Korea. And the last battlefield will be the Civil War in China. At the time, nobody said North Korea was one of the battlefields except me. Why did I say that? Well, since Kim Jong-un became the president of North Korea and had tacit agreements with U.S. President Donald Trump to leave the controlling grip of the Chinese Communists. No countries that receive Chinese Communist aids dare to declare if any Chinese communist cross its border, will be shot down. Kim Jong-un receives oil, food, weapons, including 18 atomic warheads, and also, with the help of Chinese atomic science and engineering expert, he now declares that if any Chinese people go to North Korea, they will be shot. This is a declaration of war. Don't you agree? Ladies and gentlemen, when the Vietnamese communists declare to shoot down any Chinese people who cross the 6 border gates of Vietnam, that is the day we know the Vietnamese leaders no longer act as henchmen for the Chinese communists. Therefore, I concluded that North Korea is the most obvious battlefield for the Chinese to choose. Choosing North Korea, China, is like choosing Vietnam because of the common borders. China can send troops anytime to invade North Korea and teach it a lesson. It was based on the declaration of the Chinese general who supported bringing troops into North Korea. In addition, North Korea did not have a treaty for the United Nations to recognize. What I noticed so far, the reason for the Chinese communists haven't attacked North Korea until now was because of those 18 atomic warheads. The Chinese communists taught North Korea to make these atomic warheads to threaten Japan, South Korea, and the United States in Southeast Asia. If North Korea does ballistic, it will fire a few nuclear warheads to Beijing, then China will be in big trouble. The 18 atomic warheads is the reason Beijing has not attacked North Korea. The second issue is the battlefield in Malaysia. The Chinese communists does everything they can do to make sure that the Chinese people are united under Xi Jinping. All military commanders must unite at the hands of Xi Jinping. Since the day he became the leader of the Communist Party, Xi Jinping had been so powerless that military commanders does not obey his order. Xi Jinping has not confirmed on Taiwan, while Taiwan changed its passport's name to the Republic of Taiwan. He was also incompetent with the United States because while the Chinese Navy was exercising in the southern Taiwan Strait, Tsai Ing-wen announced that the United States warship will cut through the Taiwan Strait in 2 days. The Chinese warship in the strait did not dare to resist. If Xi Jinping wants to prolong the communist regime in China and keep the country from being torn to pieces, he must unite the Chinese people and the army to become a one solid block. That is the mission that the Chinese communists are trying to carry out. The plan was to bring the entire Navy fleet of the Lang Ang aircraft carrier, the patrolling vessels, and the reserve oil supply tankers to the South China Sea. They passed through the South China Sea in Vietnam, the Spratly and Parcel Islands, and now anchor at the continental shelf of Malaysia. They anchored 210 nautical miles from the Malaysian shore. Meanwhile, the small Malaysian country commanded their naval force to be ready to attack against the Chinese invasion. The Malaysian Navy is only 2/10 compared to the Taiwanese Navy. If there is a war, the Chinese Communists will crush the Malaysian Navy within an hour. However, the prime ministers and the leaders of Malaysia are very intelligent. As soon as China sent the Lang Ang fleet to occupy several Malaysian islands, the entire Malaysian Navy deployed 200 nautical mile area to prepare to defend its island. Immediately, the Malaysian Prime Minister sent a diplomatic note to the United Nations to renounce that Malaysia is an independent sovereign state and a member of the United Nations, was at risk of invasion by China. That China planned to break the maritime law of the sea signed in 1982. China cannot use its powers to suppress small countries, so the diplomatic note was sent to the United Nations. Chinese Navy had come to the Malaysian water to face the Malaysian Navy. They can see each other within naked eyes, so the distance was probably 3 to 5 nautical miles. But why didn't China dare to fire at Malaysia? Because if China will attack and occupy a few islands, the United Nations will come in along with the United States. China will withdraw from these islands and pay collateral damage to Malaysia. On the other hand, it would make the Chinese Communists reunite again. This is Xi Jinping's move, but he had planned it wrong. What is wrong with his move? As soon as Malaysia heard that Lang Ang's fleet had entered Malaysian water, it had already deployed its navy forces to fight, showing that Malaysia was determined to defend its territory, unlike the cowardly Vietnam. Even though Malaysia is weak compared to Chinese communists, like a 1 on the 10th scale, it still protects the island. That is the military part. Malaysia is determined to protect its sovereignty with all its might, naval forces of 20 battleships. On the diplomatic part, Malaysia caused the Chinese to lose its righteousness by sending a diplomatic letter to the United Nations. The United Nations sent an official memo to Chinese ambassadors in the United Nations. China is one of the 5 veto members of the United Nations. Now that Malaysia has filed a complaint using the 1982 maritime law and declared firmly defending its territory while calling on the world that Chinese communists are using their power to bully small countries, the world and the United Nations has to do justice for Malaysia. Why does China still not dare to fight now? Because if China fires it, then China will become an aggressor without righteousness. China already lost its righteousness because of the coronavirus, Wuhan. China failed to stop the spreading of this virus to the world. At the moment, China is condemned by over 100 countries in the world. Malaysia had knocked on the borders of the United Nations. If a war were to occur, there would undoubtedly be a vote against China because of invasions of small countries. China would undoubtedly be severely punished. Xi Jinping is in a hot situation because he sent a naval force there without being able to start the fight. Malaysia is fighting on both forces in diplomacy. Malaysia is very determined. They would rather die than to succumb to China. China is now suppressed by the United Nations, and if China attacks, China is committing a bad crime because a large country invading a small country. How can you win if you already lose your righteousness? In my point of view, if China fires on an American ship or Malaysian ship, the Treaty of Malaysia and the United States will be fulfilled. And if the United States win, it will attack the Hunan bases of the Chinese communists in the South China Sea. As I speak, the Chinese Navy is in the area of Malaysian continent. They are the offensive force, and Malaysian naval are the defensive force. They both can see each other with their naked eye because the distance is only 3 to 5 nautical miles. The U.S. military is in very good by sending a battleship and a small aircraft carrier, which have about 5 new versions of F-35 that can take off vertically. The two fleets silently wait for the Chinese Communist fleet. The Chinese intel knew the Roosevelt aircraft carrier is anchored at Guam, not in the South China Sea. So Long Eng immediately moved in the area. If it comes to war, 2 U.S. cruisers present in the western part of the Philippines can deploy the F-35 within 5 minutes to attack the Chinese fleet. The 2 U.S. vessels are also blocking Chinese fleet from resupplying. The U.S. carriers are powered by nuclear war, while the Chinese carriers are powered by diesel. And therefore, they need to be refueled by the logistic tankers after 6 days. The logistic vessels can provide 4 additional days of fuel. The stretch from Hainan to the coast of Malaysia is over 1,000 and a few hundred nautical miles, and the U.S. warship present in the South China Sea to block the supply line of Chinese vessels. If the Chinese communists attacked Malaysia, they would lose their righteousness because Malaysia is a country with self-defense. Now that the Chinese got there, but has still not attacked, and they will make them lose their face. Xi Jinping's general would not listen to him. He wanted to praise the power of the Chinese communists to the world and to unite the Chinese army by bringing his power down on Malaysia. Because he couldn't start the fight, so his generals were even more aggravated. Xi Jinping is in a dilemma, not attacking to lose his authority or start a war and face consequences from the U.S. Navy. The United States will protect its allies by deploying the F-35 to attack Chinese vessels and forces to attack the submarine bases in Hainan to cut off the supply, and the Chinese will have to withdraw. Victory will return to the Malaysian forces. That is the reason I say that Chinese communists must choose another battlefield, which is North Korea. Kim Jong-un understood this situation, so he had to eliminate Beijing agents that were holding the position of party's secretary for decades. He eliminated 2 vice presidents from the Labour Party, which I had said I don't know their names yet. But I know there were two vice presidents of the Labor Party. Kim Jong-un had political power of 6. These guys are between 3 and 4. His goal was to eliminate 3 Chinese agents, but he only got to eliminate 2 agents so far. There is another agent holding the position, same as the Deputy of Defense Minister. Kim Jong-un successfully eliminated 2 vice presidents, and China responded. The Chinese intelligence team in North Korea tried to assassinate Kim Jong-un, but he has already prepared himself for a long time. His young sister directed a security force to protect him safely. At the moment, Kim Jong-un is still safe and runs North Korea. They are ready for war. First of all, North Korea has 18 nuclear warheads. Second, North Korea has a very strong army, unlike Chinese military. Why would I say that? As you can remember, when the former president of North Korea, Kim Jong II, the father of Kim Jong-un, died, any soldier who did not cry was shot by Kim Jong-un. At his funeral, if any North Korean whom did not cry, they will be shot by the North Korean government. North Korean practices iron grip discipline at war. If the soldiers do not fight with their lives in battle, their families would be killed. If a North Korean turns to South Korean, the whole family will be killed. North Korean discipline is very brutal. China has a one-child policy. In order to control the population, Chinese government allows only each family to have only one child. And when they gave birth to a girl, they would kill the baby. During the pregnancy, if the mother conceives a female fetus, she will have an abortion. China also have the custom of respect for men and not women. So the Chinese people love their son very much. Because of the restriction of childbirth, parents with sons who are serving in the army of the Chinese Communists always remind their son when they are about to go to the battlefield to preserve their own life. They would tell their son that he is the only heir of the family. So the son has to preserve their life to maintain the bloodline from passing down. So that is the mindset of the Chinese parents, passing from one generation to another. So how do I know this? Because my female disciple, who is married to a Chinese husband, she said that the Chinese military is as good as other Chinese military. But because of the effect of the parents trying to keep their sons' lives to pass on to the next bloodline, so they have disadvantages. If North Korea fights against Chinese communists, the North Korean soldiers will fight with their mighty lives, because if they don't, Kim Jong-un will have their families executed. As a one-on-one battle, China would not be able to win the battle with North Korea. North Korea has no law that each family can have only one child. That is my personal opinion. However, fighting against North Korea, China would benefit from being close to the border. In addition, China would order those Chinese generals still in Kim Jong-un's defense command to do a coup and call on China for help. then China would have an excuse to help the coup of Kim Jong-un with a righteous cause. That is my thinking, that the battlefield of North Korea is easier to execute than the battlefield with Malaysia. Chinese naval deployed there for 3 days without fighting. Eventually, the campaign of bringing the Chinese fleet into Malaysian water was a failure. If Chinese stubbornly attacked Malaysia, the world sees Chinese communists as an invading country without righteousness. However, without war, these frustrated generals would do a coup on Xi Jinping. Therefore, at all costs, the Chinese communists have to choose a battle to unite its army and the civilians become one before it will completely disintegrate. Without war, the Chinese communists would surely separate. In my personal judgment, it would be hard to avoid war in the Southeast Asia war in the next 50 days. The North Korean battlefield is one of the battlefields that the Chinese are choosing. Currently, North Korea is under martial law. Kim Jong-un has removed 2 vice presidents of the North Korean in the Labor Party. Another Chinese agent is in the Defense Ministry, has power equal to the other 2, and was about to be replaced, but China acted. China tried to track down Kim Jong-un, but the search was unsuccessful. China then created virtual news to force the North Korean president to appear. Kim Jong-un is still running North Korea, and no one knows where he is except his younger sister. Only Kim Jong-un knows where he is. All the attacks on the president of North Korea residence were not successful because it is unlikely that Kim Jong-un will be there. The point that you need to pay attention to is Chinese communists want to unite the army and the Chinese people to become one. So they have to create war. However, if they create a war in Malaysia, they would lose the righteousness. Because Malaysia is a small and weak, but its people would rather die to defend their country. At the same time, there were diplomatic notes condemning the invasion of Chinese communists based on the maritime law signed in 1982. And now that 2 U.S. destroyers were present in South China Sea to block the supply routes of Chinese communists, and if there was a war, the United States would send the battlefields into Hainan because that would make Chinese communists retreat in order to protect Hainan. That is my personal view. The United States was preparing to attack Hainan, so all its B-52s in Guam Islands were relocated back to their homeland because Hainan is very close to Guam Island. These B-52s were replaced with a newly modified F-35, which can lift off vertically with the runway. If the Chinese communists want to survive, they must create war to unite all the unsatisfied people in the country into a bloc. Because of the war, all military commanders would follow the orders of Xi Jinping and stand behind his back. The battlefield in Malaysia was chosen, but attacking it will make Chinese unrighteousness. Choosing North Korea as a battlefield is not easy because the North Line is very formidable. Kim Jong-un already revealed his rebellion against Beijing since he ordered the shooting of all Chinese who crossed the borders to take refuge from the coronavirus. That was an act of declaring war. Beijing has been very upset because it has been supporting North Korea for a long time, since Kim Jong-un's grandfather, Kim II Sung. From the 1950s Korean War, it was so many years ago, but now North Korea sides with the U.S., which is a good thing. Looking at the attitude of U.S. President Donald Trump, he was very calm. I claim Kim Jong-un is safe, with all the forums and the American newspaper had published differently, all of which were virtual news. So I make it clear that Chinese communists is the one that feeds North Korea, but they now have no control over North Korea. Chinese communists also controls Vietnam. So all our patriotic Vietnamese overseas have to support Republican Party. We must vote for the President of the United States because he can make Chinese communists collapse. Even though we live in the United States, but the laws of the United States do not allow the Republic of Vietnam organization to form an army. Even if we were allowed to create an army, we wouldn't be as strong as the U.S. force. Therefore, we have to take advantage of the situation, which is the time of the United States coping with Chinese communists. With the number of Americans dead over 50,000, with the displeasure of the world and the pain of the family of 50,000 Americans unjustly dead, President Donald Trump will not easily forgive. He already said in the press conference that China will pay a very high price when the United States has stabilized this pandemic. We have to take advantage of this as a once-in-a-thousand-years opportunity. The Vietnamese communists are being forced by the Chinese to return the Parsley and Spratly Islands, including the Tu Chin Beach. Each year, Vietnamese communist top leaders profit $25 billion from selling crude oil there. The Chinese already revealed Phạm Văn Dong's note of selling the Vietnamese exclusive economic zones of 12 nautical miles instead of 200. We have to vote for the Republican Party. 4 million Vietnamese American people in the United States, 500 to 700 people with U.S. citizenship. We must vote for the Republican Party, but must vote for President Trump. We will help Vietnam free from the communists by voting for President Trump. As I had said yesterday, when the Chinese communists collapse, the Vietnamese Communist Party will also collapse, because unlike Cuban communists, they cannot live on their own because they heavily depend on the support of the Chinese communists. They have survived up till now by selling oil, selling land, selling the peninsula, and stealing land from its own people. Therefore, as soon as the Chinese communists collapse, they will end. For those who ask me which army will be able to dissolve the Vietnamese communist regime, when the communist Chinese collapse, because all the top leaders already have United States green card. Their children and grandchildren are in the United States. They already send their money to the United States. When the communists collapse, the military personnel of the communists who have not cooperated with the Chinese and still have the love for their country will stand up with 90 million people to destroy the Communist Party members before the United Nations can intervene to protect the Vietnamese Communist members from being prosecuted without being brought to court. The Vietnamese people whom got robbed from their lands and properties from the party members will form an army to hunt and kill the communists. At that time, the United States forces have to find ways to protect these party members because they should have their trials before execution. It's true that the people will emerge to destroy the Vietnamese communists without any force. The force to disintegrate the Chinese Communist Party is the U.S. military and hundreds of countries in the world. The United States is the leading country destroying Chinese communists and will crush the Chinese communists into pieces. Vietnamese communists are just parasites. The leadership of the Vietnamese communists are incomparable to Kim Jong-un's knowledge, which is education, and he graduated from Switzerland University. The ministries of the Vietnamese Ministry of Education, Phu Sung Nga, he obtained fake degrees. The truth is, out of 10 Communist Party members, 8 of them use fake diplomas. Their level of education is not real. The economy is also unstable. The education level of the Communist Party is only 3rd grade. The Vietnamese communists are impossible to exist like Cuba and North Korea. Vietnam is a country where all the national resources are sold out as crude material. These leaders live on selling resources and robbing properties from their people. They also live off the so-called labor export rate by sending their people to do labor work for foreign countries and sending money back to Vietnam. The overseas Vietnamese who love their relatives send money back every year. However, the sources of overseas Vietnamese is no longer available because their budgets are tight due to this pandemic situation. When the Chinese communists collapse, the Vietnamese communists will also collapse. I cannot survive with the indignity of 95 million followers. Respectfully yours.